wider context. Right, now we'll take a short break then, and then we'll look at a couple of case studies and see how far the points we've discussed so far apply to them.
Okay, let's redo everything, guys, and let's answer this set. Here we go.
Now listen carefully and answer questions 1 to 10. In today's lecture, we'll begin with an overview of the impact of tourism on the societies and cultures of the host area. Then we'll look at some case studies. One model for the socio-cultural impact of tourism has been provided by Doxy. You'll find a reference in your reading list. He called his model the Iridex. That's a contraction of Irritation Index, and it attempts to show how the attitudes of local people to tourists and tourism change over the years. Doxy identifies 4 stages. He calls the first stage euphoria, happiness.
Happiness or euphoria?
The tourists are regarded as a novelty.
Novelty.
And because of this, they're welcomed by everyone in the host area. But as well as that, there's another reason for the people in the host community to welcome tourists. Local people realise that tourism brings scope for economic benefits.
Economic benefits.
As tourist development begins to increase, however, local interest in the visitors becomes sectionalised.
Okay guys, number 3 now.
And that means that some sections of the local population become involved with tourists, while others don't. And it is increasingly the case that commercial rather than social factors are influencing relationships between tourists and the host community.
What's the answer? No. Context, I said earlier, is a rephrase of the word relationships. And she said that commercial rather than social factors affect the relationships between the tourists and the locals. The relationships, therefore, of the tourists and the locals become more commercialized than social. So the answer, therefore, is commercial. Commercial rather than social factors. Meaning guys, that the relationship of the tourists and the locals are more about commerce because they're tourists, right? So that's why it's become more commercial than social.
People are less interested in the tourists for their own sake. Doxy calls this stage apathy. If development continues to increase, apathy may change to annoyance. What's causing this? Well, development of the tourist area may start to spiral up out of control, and this is often accompanied by congestion, which is going to make life difficult for local people. So the policymakers, the government, the local authorities and so on, provide more infrastructure for the area, more roads, more car parks and so on, to try to help cope with the influx of tourists. But the lives of the local people are made increasingly difficult, and in the final stage of the model, annoyance has turned to antagonism and open hostility to the tourists. And now, all the detrimental changes to lifestyles in the host area are, fairly or unfairly, seen as due to the tourists.
What's the answer? Yes, changes in the lifestyles of the people are fairly or unfairly blamed on the tourists. Okay? So that's your answer, guys. Now, let me flash the other half here. And as it's given, guys, let me just replay it. Let me just flash everything on the board. Okay?
Well, this sort of pathway is certainly a fairly good reflection of what happens in some tourist destinations.
Number 6 now.
But Doxey's model has drawn a number of criticisms. The most significant is that it suggests a very negative attitude to the socio-cultural effects of tourism. The fact that the model is unidirectional, that it only works in one direction, seems to suggest that decline in the host-visitor relationship is inevitable. Now, in practice, fortunately, things aren't always quite like that. If you look at real situations, you'll see that the relationships between local people and tourists are rather more complicated and prone to greater variation than this model suggests. So the model is really rather oversimplified. In fact, studies have highlighted quite a few positive effects of tourism. For example, Doxey's model doesn't look at the effects on the tourists themselves. They may well benefit from increased understanding of the host society and culture. Then, traditional crafts in the host area may be revitalized because tourism provides new markets, such as the souvenir trade, for example. So, instead of these traditional skills being lost, local people are encouraged to develop them. There may also be more long-lasting changes, which actually lead to the empowerment of both groups and individuals in the host area. For example, tourism creates openings for employment for women, and through giving them a chance to have a personal income, it allows them to become more independent. In addition, because tourism tends to work through very few languages that have worldwide usage, those working in the tourist industry may be encouraged to acquire new languages, and this will empower them through providing wider access to globalized media.
Yeah, it's an ES. Good. Alright. So guys, I am seeing that your scores are improving, right? So please tally up everything now. Of course, because this is a guided activity, the scores are often higher, but when you are on your own, right, this is going to be a different thing. So hopefully this will empower you, right? Can you please tally up everything, all the 4 sections? How many items did you get correct? 27, not bad. Okay. How about yours, Rich? Sige, let me first ask chat. 35. 35 for chat, well done. How about yours? 25. 18. Better than the 11 and the 9 you had the last time. How about yours, Jobel? 20? 27, very good. How about yours, Rich? 16. Also much better than what you had the last time. Okay, guys, let's give ourselves a break for about 10 minutes. I have boiled some water already, so you'll need to boil it yourselves for some coffee. And then after 10 minutes, let's resume and do some reading activity together. Okay? Break muna, guys.